with Tschabalala Self for her first international solo show in Europe. You were born in Harlem, New York in 1990 and did your schooling in Yale, where you graduated in 2015. During the process to build the exhibition, several titles have been under discussion and have finally you chose Make Room. Could you tell us how you come to this title and build the show as a whole?
The title of the show, Make Home, refers to the domestic space. The majority of the new paintings in the exhibition deal with the home or trappings of the home. So many of the paintings show features of domestic life, i.e. furniture or quilts, figures either reclining or at leisure. I wanted to pick a title for the show that referenced a room to bring to mind to the viewers the idea of a quarter or being within an interior space. Interiority also is referring to a psychological space of many of the characters in the work, thinking about their internal feelings and internal desires. I've often dealt with liminal environments in my paintings, having figures set within color fields. And recently I wanted to explore the potentiality of the home being a separate liminal space. So a space that's known, but also a space that is somewhat mysterious. Usually I'm starting with just the form. So I'm dealing with the figure primarily. My figures usually come together somewhat organically. I'm rarely working from a drawn study and trying to realize that in the studio. I'm generally just pulling from the scrap that already exists in the studio and having the figure really come together bit by bit. Generally, there's some kind of anchor, either a face, an arm, a hand, some body part that anchors the entire figure. Once the figure is developed in its majority, at that point I start to imagine more of a narrative to then farther anchor that figure within a greater story or context. So I say that the narratives are usually somewhat imposed or projected onto the figures once they're already composed, or once they're already finished. I would say that the formal qualities of the work are all rooted within more American, like folk traditions. I don't even know if I would use the word folk, but it's just more artwork that is outside of the mainstream. So you're thinking about artwork that is more quotidian or artwork that is more associated with the home or domestic life, even artwork that's more associated with like women's work. So quilt making in particular is the primary art form that I would say inspires the formal qualities of my practice. Not even in just the construction, but primarily in the sourcing of the materials. Oftentimes quilts are made from fabrics or scraps that are kind of discarded or things that are leftovers. And similarly, I use fabrics and scraps, bits and pieces, things that were recycled, paintings that work, even kind of cannibalize them within my own studio in new works. So I think the ethos of my making, but also just the actual process are all rooted within quilt making.
In the mezzanine room, we can discover the film edited from your performance piece. You were invited by Performa last year, 2021, which is very important performance biennale in New York. You actually orchestrated the whole performance, writing the script, stage set, and costume design. How did you come to performing art? And will you pursue further in this direction?
Well, I first participated in it because I was asked to by Rosalie Goldberg and Kathy Noble. They approached me with the opportunity to participate in the biennial, and at first I wasn't even sure that I was a good fit for the project because I didn't really have much interest in performance art as I had understood it at that moment. And I also just didn't really see how my work could be translated in that direction. But you know, they felt like they saw this kind of performative element already embedded in my paintings, and they pushed me and encouraged me to kind of mind my own practice and kind of, you know, developing further something that was already there, something that they believed was already there. So I had lots of time during, you know, 2020 and then through 2021 to reconsider my practice, to reconsider some of the ways in which I hope for people to engage with my practice. And it was particularly exciting in the idea that this piece can be outdoors and for the public. I also too, I believe after the moment of isolation, the idea of working so collaboratively was also exciting. And the performance piece, unlike with a painting, it's not like a solitary experience. If you're working on a painting, you're in your studios, the only other, you know, entity within that space is really the work that you're creating. Whereas if you're working on something like a performance piece, there are actors, there are people working on lighting, there's any number of collaborators. So that experience within itself was very invigorating. And for those reasons, for the collaborative aspect and the kind of things that happen spontaneously as a result, I think I would enjoy working in that regard again. But the way in which I entered the project was that I decided to write a narrative. Writing has always been a big part of my practice, but more like a personal aspect of it. So this was an opportunity for me to write something and then share it with my viewers. So the piece really began with this text, and from there I began to add more and more layers to it. Similarly to how I would in one of my paintings, I tried to really mimic the same kind of steps that I would do in a painting work in the performance, kind of just working in layers and sections, separations almost, then allowing them to all come together to create one event or one moment. And it was really important for me for this work to have a connection to my paintings for people who had already been familiar with my practice. So I wanted the play to appear like a painting, so I wanted every aspect of it to be aestheticized. And in that regard, I wanted to make all the furniture, all the costumes, really have every point of the stage be kind of touched by my aesthetic. And you know, because of putting that much energy into the entire look of the space, I had to kind of explore different things like design, even the functional art design, which allowed me to make these furniture pieces that are now part of the exhibition here. So ultimately, it was a very, very good experience, and I think that it expanded my practice. I would love to make a movie one day. I mean, it's like the ultimate goal. Brown girl in the ring, Tschabalala, she looks like a sugar in a plum. Brown girl in the ring, Tschabalala, there's a brown girl in the ring, Tschabalala. I definitely imagine all my figures as being archetypes, and I think that my work is ultimately humanistic. It's about just lived experiences, feelings, desires that are accessible, that all people have access to. I use my own narrative as a vehicle to tell these stories because this is the only lived experience that I can speak to honestly. But outside of that, I don't feel like me using my own identity politic prevents other people from having access to some of the overarching concepts in the work. And I suppose Adam and Eve could be a good metaphor for the figures who are within the work. But I think that even more immediately, again, it just deals with maybe the primary archetypes that every individual, for the most part, has in their life: a mother and father, brother and sister. Just kind of that duality of, like, again, the quotidian, one versus the other, two sides of the same coin. So thinking about two aspects of one unified human existence.